The Old Testament of the Bible contains a book called Job. It's about a man named Job who is described as wealthy, righteous, and deeply faithful to God. The story shows how Job faces extreme hardships and asks why bad things happen to good people and whether God is fair and just. Job's life takes a dramatic turn when he is suddenly stripped of his wealth, family, and health. This book of Job in the Bible is often cited by Christians as an example of strong faith. But if we look closely, it reveals something far more disturbing. The book tells the story of a God who deliberately causes suffering on an innocent man just to prove his power. This is a shocking and troubling portrait of morality. This is actually a fake story designed to fool believers into thinking faithfulness will be rewarded. It asks them to endure suffering blindly, teaching obedience to a God whose actions are often cruel and senseless. Job is described as blameless and upright, a man who fears God. However, the story takes a bizarre turn when God sets up Satan to test Job, when Satan claims that Job is only faithful because of his prosperity. In this story, Satan is not an independent evil being. The Hebrew term Satan means accuser or adversary. He acts as a kind of heavenly prosecutor, reporting to God whether humans are truly righteous. God's action shows that Job's faith must be validated even in the eyes of Satan. What follows is a chain of events that pushes this man Job to the absolute limit, highlighting the absurdity of the story. Job loses his wealth, his livestock are killed, his servants murdered. But the tragedies don't stop there. They escalate even further. Job's children die in a tragic accident. Job himself is afflicted with painful wounds. All this suffering is deliberately orchestrated to see if Job's faith will waver. As Job struggles under unimaginable losses, his so-called friends offer their wisdom. Even in the midst of this cruelty, Job appeals directly to God, demanding answers. Job questions God, asking why he is being punished without cause. His suffering is extreme, yet he is told to trust God's wisdom, even though God orchestrated the entire ordeal. Through all of this, the character of God emerges in a deeply troubling way. The narrative portrays God as capricious, manipulative, and almost prideful, using extreme pain to test humans. When Job asks God why he is suffering, God doesn't answer. Instead, God challenges Job with questions like, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" Or, "Who gave the morning its place?" This is not just a display of power. It is a message to all believers. Do not question God. Do not doubt His justice or challenge His actions. Obey blindly and shut your mouth. The so-called lesson in this book at the end is not justice or compassion. The story does not end the moral questions. This is how the book of Job works. Believers are promised wealth, health, and protection if they follow God faithfully. But in reality, they face life's hardships just like anyone else, which can make them question God's love or even His existence. The story is designed to trick them into thinking that every difficulty in life is orchestrated by God for a specific purpose. They are not supposed to doubt or question. They are expected to obey blindly. And very tactfully, the book of Job ends with God restoring Job's wealth, family, and health, and even doubling his blessings. This gives believers a false hope that everything will be perfectly restored and they will be happy in the end. But real life doesn't work that way, and no divine reward comes for obedience. Many Christians use this ending to defend God's cruelty, claiming Job's suffering was worth it. But in reality, suffering doesn't come with divine restoration. Life doesn't work like a storybook. People who endure hardships rebuild their lives through effort, resilience, and support, not because God intervenes. Those who never believe in the biblical God do not lose anything, and even when they suffer, they often fight back and restore themselves without any supernatural help. The story of Job is not a reflection of reality. It is a fabricated, man-made tale, a meaningless lesson created to glorify God's power, with no connection to how suffering, justice, or life actually works. It is absurd to suggest that this fairy tale teaches anything about real morality or divine justice. A God who tortures innocent people just to prove a point? Should anyone call that a holy God? The book of Job in the Old Testament exposes the God of the Bible as cruel, arbitrary, and utterly absurd.